And this is a Monday morning, and you're all of you from all quarters of the country and probably beyond. There are people in Australia, Pat, this very moment leaning forward to their TV or their computer screens to see us. Of course, you can see us on your TV now too. You know that we're on
Yes, you
YouTube,
can.
so they can look
Yeah.
at our manly forms can fill the entire TV screen, all 50 inches of it or whatever.
How lucky can you get? Yeah.
What a way to start a week.
Give yourself nightmares. Anyway,
Let's not talk ourselves down. We're a boon to humanity, which
yeah.
is more than you can say about the state of Israel.
Uh,
Tell us about I heard it in the car as I was coming. I was out this morning and I was coming back. I heard this news and my heart sank to the point where you just don't know where to start giving out about it.
Jude, I was listening to well, I've got a fascination about it, though. I've got to sort of say, I've nearly sickened myself now. I just don't want to listen to it half the time. But anyway, uh, I got into an argument with an American the other night. There, he's a total pro-Israeli and all the rest of it. And one of the things he tried to do, like, I'm coming to the point you're making.
Is this
He's tried to
online,
suggest
Pat? Is this
what
online or online?
this online
Yeah,
social
yeah.
media, and he said, terrorists supporting Ireland having a go at Israel. I thought, hey, Jude, just for the sake of record, and the World Peace Index released, I think, at the weekend, Ireland is number two in the peace index. Um, Ireland is also probably one of the most peaceful countries in the world. And the second thing, big time, was we did not invade any other country. We were invaded by the Brits. And Jude, irrespective of what you think of the IRA, people are entitled to resist colonization and whatever else. Now you can say how you resist it is a different matter, but you're entitled to resist it anyway. But anyway, here's this thing, Jude. I find it amazing that these people who can make these sort of comments about Ireland have no problem with mass murder, with attacks on hospitals, refugee centres, schools, denying 2.3 million people food, water, and medicines and all the rest. This morning, the Israelis killed, they say at least 15 people, at least. And they don't have the the really lousy way. It's called the double tap. They bomb something, knowing that medics and journalists will go there. And when they arrived, then they bombed it again, knowing that the target will be the very people who arrived first. So apparently, there's a Reuters reporter killed, and there's another Al Jazeera reporter killed, and they're not sure how many others. I was just listening to the RT News. It was just basically coming in as we speak. Jude, I think let's get it on the record. I think the Israelis are the most despicable nation on earth. I really genuinely. The barbarism, they accuse Hamas of barbarism. Dude, it's really good. These are the people who, by the way, there's quite a lot of evidence, according to a lot of these NGOs, that they are absolutely sexually assaulting prisoners in Israeli jails, that they're using torture in jails, that they're putting 15 and 20 people in rooms where they quite literally have to piss and shit on the floor, doing it deliberately to degrade and humiliate them. There's a young fella released the last day. He said he was beaten for 30 days, daily 30 days. And Jude, if you see the photograph of the young fella coming out with Israeli soldiers, he's only a teenager. Jude, he looked horrific. He looked like he's getting out of Belgium, Dachau or somewhere like that. So, Jude, I don't know how we can sit. Your guy Fletcher from the UN was on the other day and said this famine, which has been confirmed in Gaza. He says this one's on us. We have sat back and watched it. He says what he means is the whole world knows about it. It's not a question we don't know about it. So, Jen, I don't know what more anyone can say about when you sit and watch all this.
Do you know what sickens me a little bit? Is people who are now speaking out, governments that are now speaking out and saying this is terrible, this cannot go on. Uh, I'll tell you an experience I had yesterday, Pat. I was at Mass, and at the end of the Mass, and I mean, he's a very nice man, the priest. He was very good. He quoted Robert Frost and used him
Yeah,
as the sort of subject for his homily.
the
But
road less
he
traveled.
said after Mass it'd be if anybody wanted to stay behind, he could say a rosary. And this is for the people of Gaza who are suffering so terribly. And I guess that's an order is where it's been given out by the bishop. It'll be all the parishes.
Yeah,
Now, it's good to see the Catholic Church or anybody praying for or supporting the people of Gaza. But I mean, here, I'm going to just be blunt. What the fuck kept them after the
yeah,
first 1,000 people were killed? Did they
yeah,
feel that wasn't enough? Did they have to wait to 2,000, 3,000, and now well over 60,000?
yeah,
I think there's something kind of despicable about the way people, whether it's the Catholic Church or whether it's governments, and the Irish government would lead the line here, I think,
yeah,
uh, that don't speak out at the time and allow it to go on and on and on and on. You say, what can we do? I don't know if there's anything we can do.
yeah.
You think there must be something. But Jesus, if ever a nation destroyed the goodwill it had from the Second World War, that's the Israelis. You just say
Uh,
the word Israeli nowadays, and people really get.
I think in Paris yesterday or the day before, I think there's a restaurant refused to serve Israelis. There's an Italian restaurant that refuses. And Jude, I support that 100%.
So
And
would
I'll tell you
I.
why. These people might be innocent. I don't know. But Jude, if people come in the 1930s, Nazis, would you have served them and said, "Hey,
Uh,
it's okay. We agree with what you're doing"? No, we
uh,
wouldn't.
uh,
Whether they were good Germans or bad Germans, are irrelevant. And
mm,
sending out the message, look, what you are doing as a nation does not
mm.
reflect our views or values.
Yeah, I thought that thing you said, Pat, was very apt about the double tap, where they bombed this hospital and then waited till journalists and media people and doctors came rushing to help the
Yeah.
wounded, and then bombed it again. 244 journalists and media workers have now been killed across Gaza.
Mm.
Ah, where do you begin? Where do you begin? Like they block uh, any number of journalists from going in, BBC and so on, and the ones that they allow in, they then kill them.
Yeah,
Uh,
but you know the other thing as well, which is unbelievable. I've seen this Novotny, or what do we call it, the Israeli ambassador to Britain. She's trying to say, look, on this sort of what would you say, ratio that you can kill. This sort of that Israel is below what is killed. Dude, in the Second World War and the First World War, well, particularly the Second World War, it was a sort of a contest or a conflict between equal nations. I know, in other words, they both had armies, both had navies, both had air forces, and so on. What the Israelis are doing, they're trying to say this is an equal war. One side has an army, a navy, and an air force, and they're dropping bombs on people who have none of those things. They have no air defenses. They are trapped. They can't get out, and they're trying to say that there's some sort of moral equivalence between what went on in the Second World War and what they're doing. There's no equivalence to it. If the people below are trapped and can't get away, the Bernie Sanders and the Lancet have said that when this is all over, that there will be absolutely no surprise if there's 200,000 plus Yazans dead. Dude, that's a horrific,
did
200,000, dude. And and the starvation level, dude, it's exploding exponentially. At the start, it was one or two people dying. Now they're saying it's up 20s and 30s dying every day, and that's going to go out and out and out.
did you see that clip of there was an attack on Gaza and they were digging out this woman and she was lying
Yeah,
there
and
and she just
Saturday,
saw
I
the
think.
face framed by rubble.
Uh,
There was something particularly horrible about that.
Horrible, absolutely. Yeah,
Uh, I don't know. I mean, everybody agrees that Israel is guilty of war crimes. Everybody agrees Netanyahu is a war criminal. I would say that people who supply him with the weaponry are also war criminals, but
yeah.
I'd be open to a debate on that. But certainly
Any
Netanyahu.
day.
But will Netanyahu pat every day in jail? Do you think?
Not at all. No, not at all.
And yet these are the people that went to Argentina or wherever, kidnapped that guy that they tried then from the Second World War, Eichmann,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and executed him and said, what a terrible thing. Oh, dear God, I don't know where to start.
Yeah,
Okay,
I just the reason we're doing this conversation is whatever influence. There's a friend of mine saying, Somebody says one day, like, what's the point in me speaking out? Well, what's the point in 6 billion people not speaking out? If everybody speaks out, we get heard. Like, what the best we can do is use this as a platform to speak out, and
But,
maybe the people listening to us, maybe they'll speak out.
but you see, the speaking out, Pat, that doesn't peel any potatoes. You know,
No,
words
yeah,
are just words. You've got to have action.
yeah,
You've got to have
yeah,
action. Anyway,
yeah,
I'm torn between going to a man called Richard Wolff, who was very interesting. I watched him the first time I heard of him. I watched him on YouTube on our telly last night because you can get, as I say, a lot of YouTube programs now on well, any YouTube program you can watch it on your TV. I watched this guy called, I think he's called Richard Wolff, and he's a
yeah.
very unimpressive looking figure. He's sort of, I don't know, he's balding and he's glasses and he looks like a guy who might have come out of a sort of a greasy diner somewhere in
Mm,
the States. But boy, was he effective. He talked about the First World War, in between the First and Second World War, Second World War, and then a comparison with America today. Jeez, was good. He said Bismarck, for example, I'd say many people don't know this. I know you'd know it, but that Bismarck invented Germany in the
yeah,
19th century. He got all these states,
yeah. He sort of hammered it together, types like,
welded
yeah,
them together, hammered them
uh,
together exactly. Uh, at this stage, at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, um, Germany began to develop colonies. It had a number of
yeah,
colonies. And who were they then a rival to? England. England
yeah.
was the empire, and it was the place that had most colonies. So, surprise, surprise, one of the things we did in history when I was at UCD was what were the causes of the First World War? Do you know, I never heard it said
The
that.
defense of small nations, Dr. Collins.
Jeez, gallant little Belgium, my arse.
Yeah,
According to this guy, and I go along with that, I've heard this before, that they had begun to develop a colony system that was beginning to rival that of England. And the
yeah,
English weren't going to put up with that. And so they attacked them and defeated them. And the Germans were forced after that war, after the First World War, not only were they beaten militarily, but they were forced to compensate the Allies for decades.
yeah,
Ordinary German people. Then the other thing that he did very vividly was the wild inflation that took hold of Germany then.
yeah,
He
yeah,
said, he said what would happen would be the inflation was such a pace. He said when a guy would work for half a day, one of the family would be there. He'd give him the money, and he'd run. The kid would run like a wind home to buy stuff, because if he waited to the end of the day, the price probably would have doubled.
yeah.
I mean, the inflation you're talking about was in millions, not just in.
I remember we did a wee bit about that. Apparently, it got so bad that they start paying each other in cigarettes because the cigarettes had more value than the money.
Oh yeah,
But the
well that's
bottom line, Jude, I think it wasn't it the Versailles Treaty or something in 1918
oh
where
aye,
the Allies insisted that the what do you call it, reparations that
aye,
they
aye, aye,
Germans
that's right.
and Hitler used exactly that the great nation of Germany had been humiliated
Mhm.
and so on, and he used that as a sort of rallying cry to build up this nationalism that we are
Mhm.
not taking that. And Jude, that was absolutely the catalyst
Yeah,
for the Second World War
that's right.
because he says we're not taking us, and then he started building up the Volkswagen car, the people's car. He built autobahns, and he
Mhm.
made the trains run on time and
Mhm.
this whole militarization. But
Yeah,
the direct result of that was the human, Hitler had fought in the First World War. Wasn't he a private or something in the First World War?
aye.
But he used all that sort of hatred of what had been done to the German people to stir up absolute what Germany über alles, Germany above all.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. This guy was saying that there was a cleavage in German society at the time because the workers were on their knees, trying to get
Yeah,
by with inflation and unemployment and God knows what. And there was a left, which consisted of socialists and communists, and there was a right, which was Hitler. and Hitler won the day.
By the way, sometimes, as you know, Jude, I'm quite active on social media. I remember getting involved in a big debate about, these right wingers, particularly Americans, you socialists. I'm leftist, as you well know, but this guy tried to tell me that Hitler was a socialist. He was a leftist. Dude, Jesus, you go, wait a minute. The first thing Hitler did was get rid of trade unions. He executed trade union leaders. He took away all the rights. He took up, he was the most right wing person you could ever come across. Like,
I-
and by the way, look, Jude, you're probably guessing where I'm going with what's happening in America. Trump is actually doing straight out of Hitler's playbook. He's talking about sending in federal troops into 22 states. Now, Jude, they're all run by left wingers, people of color, and Democrats, etc., etc. He's what do you call it? He's making out the enemies. These people coming on. He's doing the exact same.
uh,
He's using, Hitler used the Jews as the cement to build the Germans together. These are the enemy. We would have a great time, but for these people,
mhm.
no, I
That's
could keep
exactly
going.
that's the point that guy Richard Wolff made at the end. He said Hitler developed his stormtroopers, which would be used to, you know, get rid of Jews, get rid of immigrants as quickly as possible. And that's
Yeah,
exactly what's happening now. I see where Trump is intending to send the National Guard, which brackets stormtroopers, to Chicago.
yeah.
Well, I watched another thing on YouTube, and the guy was discussing, how close are we to fascism? Are we really that close, or is it just that we're
They are
getting? Well,
very
according
close
to
to.
this guy Wolf, he says the similarities are so striking, and he kept using the expression, "Are we a fascist country now?" He kept saying, "Not yet, not yet."
Yeah.
Not yet.
Aye,
You
but
know?
aye, but
So it's a question
uh,
of time, really. Um, I see what amazes me is there's so many smart people, and it seems to me listening to them, fearless people who are pointing this out in public. You know, how will Trump get around that? Will he imprison these people? I mean, there's so many of them, like the governor of California. These people
Gavin
they're
Newsom.
quite open in their opposition to him and
Yeah.
denunciation of what he's doing. I wonder. I don't think was that the case in Germany during the interwar
No,
years. I don't think
I
so.
don't think it was. No,
Yeah.
but it's what I, Jude. But the thing about it, Trump has attacked just about every liberal institution. He's attacked the courts. The media is the enemy of the people. He's got rid of all. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He sacked him immediately. He's
Hmm.
put in the Attorney General is not a law officer. She's an absolute Trump lackey. There's no attempt whatever made it impartiality. The head of the FBI has raided John Bolton's house because Bolton has criticized Trump. It's just one thing after another. And when the person in charge of labor statistics last week or last month came out and said that the labor statistics are looking bad, Trump sacked her. No, don't let the facts get in the way of the politics. In other words, he sacked someone for telling the truth. She basically said, "Here are the statistics." So he sacked her
Hmm.
because the statistics.
Hmm.
He said that those they were politically motivated. How can you politically motivate statistics? They are what they are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How do you think this will all end, Pat?
So
Shoot
I,
forward,
I think I
shoot
think it must
forward
be a
three
wake up
years,
call for a lot
Pat.
of Americans.
3 years,
What?
from 3 years from now, what do you think it'll be the situation in America?
The only thing I think there is and Gavin Newsom, the American, the
The governor
Californian
of,
guy,
yeah.
I think he struck a chord. He started mocking Trump, and it's been very effective. In fact, I did an article in the Irish News about it. Notice sort of Trump's capital letters,
Yeah.
grammatical fuck
The
ups, right, left, and center.
small
He's starting
hands.
to, small hands, tiny hands, and all that sort of. Newsom, Jude, when you can show a mirror at to the Trump supporters just how stupid the rest of the world sees this man. Now, Dan Rather, the former
Yeah.
senior newsman, he's come out very strongly. He says, as a patriot, he says, I have voted both Democrat and Republican in the past. He says, the reason I hate Trump is because basically he's a fascist. And so on. And various other people are coming out. No, Jude, but you asked the question. Jude, Trump doesn't seem to care. He's got Caroline Levitt lies on air non-stop. There's I can't remember the name of the other one as well. Jude, they're just lying,
But how is
and
it going to
they
end
seem to
up?
be dismantling.
How will it
Say
end up
again.
in, say, 3 years from now?
I think a lot of the guardrails for American democracy, unless things change in the midterms, if Trump wins the midterms, dude, I'd be very fearful of the American democracy
So would I.
because, dude, it's definitely ruled by the oligarchs at the
Mhm,
minute,
mhm.
and they're dismantling a lot of, by the way, if they don't like the books and like public libraries, they're banning that.
I
They're
used
taking
to
away a
write.
lot.
Yeah,
Say,
sorry, Pat.
say again.
I was going to
No,
say
no, they're they're
I
they're 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 going back the way. They're regressing.
Yeah, yeah. I used to rack my brains as to why people didn't, say, God, this is costing me, and groceries are more, and so on. But I guess he has convinced them, that the reason that they're that way, that life is hard for you, is because of these outside enemies and these
Yeah,
traitors from within, like Gavin Newsom. So if you can find an enemy to blame, people people are terribly gullible, if they're
yeah,
suffering, somebody can
absolutely.
point them out, somebody who's a bad person. It's such a relief to focus your hatred on that one person rather than some
Yeah.
sort of system was set up, like
Mm.
the one that our friend Trump has, where he passes laws, or is it presidential? What is it? Edicts.
Freeze.
Uh,
I
that in fact wind up giving billions to technical guys or high tech guys or rich people or billionaires.
By the way, Jude,
Sweet bugger
apparently,
all for
I
what?
know the tariffs he introduced.
Yeah,
Apparently, Congress is supposed to have oversight on all that sort of stuff.
I thought the same.
Congress,
Why haven't they done it?
they haven't because apparently the Republicans didn't show up. They're all scared shitless of Trump, so the Republicans stayed away. And you can't have a debate with yourself. The
Oh,
Democrats showed up, but the Republicans didn't. Jude, the founding fathers of America. I don't think they ever thought that they'd reach a situation where one president could have both the Congress, the House of Representatives, the senators, and the executive branch all sort of absolutely under his thumb to the extent that he's basically a dictator. By the way, I noticed outside when they were raiding John Bolton's house, the former U.S. Secretary of State, he's become a big enemy of Trump's, even though he's a despicable human being himself. But
that's
anyway,
right.
there was people outside with placards, "No kings here." In other words, Kash Patel, the FBI director, when he was getting ratified by Congress, said, "I can confirm there will be no revenge, no politicization of the FBI." He's hardly in the job, what, about 6 months, and he's already attacked and used the FBI to smear people. And the attack on the raid on Bolton is straightforward politics. It's got nothing to do with it. Uh, uh, um, Bolton has written a book, I think, is in the Situation Room or something it's called, and he basically says Trump hasn't a clue about foreign policy.
The amazing thing this time is that everything is in the open. Like they don't make any
Uh,
bones about the fact that we're going to go after this guy, or make any bones about guys, masked faces, arresting immigrants without any warrant or anything else and shipping them
yeah,
off to some hellhole. It's amazing. He's growing in confidence with every day.
yeah,
And of course, he's also the guy who's right behind Israel. So at home and abroad, it's a pretty sad situation. Okay, let's start talking about the burger. Let's talk about Professor Brenton O'Leary. Now, he has a video which I'd encourage people to look for. In fact, if I can find a way of putting that video up on my, what do you call it, my site, I'll do that.
yeah.
But anyway, look for Brenton O'Leary, Professor Brenton O'Leary talking about Ireland or talking about referendum is well worth listening to. I was struck, you can tell me what you think, Pat, but I was struck by a couple of points he raised.
Mm.
He made no bones about the fact that we must start now. We've got to start
Yeah,
preparing. And he talked in terms of about 5 years' time. He asked questions such as, will the referendums north and south be simultaneous? And I think we've always assumed they would be same day,
yeah,
but maybe not,
yeah,
maybe not. And I wonder if
yeah.
that'll make a difference. He also said, and this was a truly interesting one, would people be, when they, before they voted in the referendum, would they be offered competing models of what a
Yeah.
united Ireland would look like? Or would that be something that would be developed after they'd made the vote? What would your feelings be on that, Pat?
Let me. This is Doctor
Oh, yeah,
Brendan
yeah,
O'Leary's book. I had actually got it a couple of a friend of mine sent it to me quite a few months ago. It's very sort of, I'll use the word intense book. It's not an easy read. There's a
yeah.
lot of sort of projections and figures. Here's the thing, Jude. He said there's two sort of myths that the subsidy is from Britain is so large. This is one of the myths that the Republic couldn't deal with it. He says that's not true, and he says I can't remember what's the oh, he says, oh yeah, the fact that there's some people claim that there's no real graph or unity. He says that's not true either. He says what's happened is there's no discussion about it at governmental level. He says the Brits, you're 100% right. The point he made, he says the Brits. There's no obligation on them to start a discussion. In fact, Northern Ireland is part of the UK, and so it comes down to the government in Dublin. If there's going to be any sort of move towards a United Ireland or Irish unity, the government in Dublin will have to plan for that. And he said there should be planning for the next 5 years. And he also makes the point that the Dublin government are the ones that are going to have to sort of drive the thing. So he says basically they should be getting think tanks, academics, intellectuals, and all the rest of it and start now. And
Hmm.
he thinks he says right there was two models. There's the one like the basically the north comes into the south, and there's sort of local democracy at each county level, and so on. Or then there's the what would you call it? The devolved model, as I suppose you would call it, like the way Stormont's devolved from Westminster.
Yeah.
It's simply rather Westminster hands over the power to Dublin, and Northern Ireland remains devolved from Dublin, but under Dublin's authority. He
Hmm.
says no, there would have to be referendums and all the rest of it
Hmm.
about that. But basically, what he's sort of saying, if we start planning for it, if we start looking at the finances, the health, the education system, and all the rest of it, and in other words, before anybody goes to the poll, they know the polls. They know exactly what
Hmm.
they're voting for,
Hmm.
which is what me and you have been saying for 5 years.
Yeah.
People like you don't want another Brexit. Like talk about Britain. What's the news about 60% of buyer's remorse in regard to Brexit?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And if they stumble into a united Ireland, there would be the danger of that. But I think the thing about O'Leary is he is a true academic, and he's got
Yeah,
that academic's cool. He's got that
yeah,
coolness where of somebody who has all sorts of statistics at his fingertips. And one of the things he said is there's a lot of people sitting on the fence in terms of the
yeah,
population of the North. He also makes the point that there isn't a Catholic majority or Catholic background majority in the North now. At present, he says there's 45.7% Catholic background as opposed to 43.5% of, loosely speaking, Protestant or other. Uh, but he says that by the end of the decade, that 45.7% will convert into a real over 50%, in other words, a
yeah,
majority. So while it might be the biggest block, as it were, the Catholic people in the North, it'll get to be a bigger block to a point where it will tip the scales at 50, over 50. And I mean, if I was a unionist and faced with that, I think I'd be getting my skates on. I really would. I
yeah,
know they say that, oh, that'll just encourage them. But time is passing and it's going to happen,
yeah.
except they do something about it. Well, it's going to happen anyway. But the question is to get a negotiation and get yourself valued equally with other people. Meanwhile, Pat,
Let me go back a wee bit. You just said
yeah,
something there earlier. I used to work with a man called Frank Kern. Frank was one of the old nationalists, and he was a sort of an advisor to Eddie McAteer, but he was
uh,
a behind the scenes man. Anyway, but he came up. He was big into this thing, demographics, did on a way that he was fascinated by it. He claimed that the unionists, when they were gerrymandering Derry, they knew exactly how many votes were in each street, and and worked at you go into the north ward, you go into the south ward, you go into the and he says to gerrymander it. But Frank was a bit of an expert on it as well. And I remember he kept telling me, this is in the 80s. He says, Pat, there's a big difference between what's happening in the North. He says, you'll live to see a Catholic majority. I won't. But he says, here's the thing. He says, everybody keeps talking about the Catholic birth rate, but he says they omit the Protestant death rate. And I says, what do you mean by that, Frank? He says, they're the older population. They have less children. More of them are dying. And he says, that is equally as important as the Catholic birth rate. But he says, the second thing, which I don't know if it's still true, he says, a lot of the young intellectuals or the middle class, he says, a lot of them immigrate to Scottish universities and never come back. And he says that, the brain drain of the unionist community. So, Jude, all those factors are now in play. And are they exponentially growing? I don't know. But anyway, it seems to be this last while, and about 10 years ago, Sinn Féin were the minority party and all over the place. Now they're the biggest party at Stormont, the biggest party in Belfast, the biggest party in Derry, and so on. And is
Biggest
it what
party
is
in
it, four
Ireland.
or five of the now of the six counties have Catholic majorities? So
Yeah.
it's all sort of running one way.
It is, it is. And that's another good reason for people getting together and starting to do the work of citizens' assemblies or governments coming in and putting out a white paper and saying what kind of image they are thinking of for Ireland. Let's go finally, Pat, because we've just about 2.5 minutes, to Simon Harris and that nice woman, Jennifer Carroll McNeil, who's the health minister in the South.
Jude,
Tell her.
what have you got against Jennifer Carroll McNeil? Go on,
Well, she's a
let's hear
very
it.
fine woman, a fine, glamorous, good-looking woman. Now I know that you're not supposed to say anything about a woman's appearance. I would have said that was a compliment, but there you go. If someone would tell me I'm a fine-looking man, I will not say they're sexist one bit. Anyway, Jennifer Carroll McNeil, the health minister, has called for the removal of the triple lock, and she has
Yeah,
done so, I gather, at Ballina. And she
yeah,
has
Michael
done it
Collins.
in the name, she says, of freedom. That at the moment Ireland isn't free to, that the triple. Well, maybe we should say the triple lock is what makes
It's about
decisions about
neutrality.
Ireland sending armed men and women overseas
Yeah.
to do something. She's going to get rid of the lock, she says, or wants to get rid of it, which allows the UN to block us. What do you think of that, Pat? Would that be?
There's two arguments. There was a couple of really right-wing Tory MPs during the Brexit debate when Ireland was very strong about saying we're looking to look after our interests. I remember there was a couple of guys, real heavy duty smears. Ireland uses IGNA, British, what do you call it, Air Force and all the rest to protect it, and all the rest. It claims neutrality, but it depends on us for their security. And one guy went on about the transatlantic cables. I think they're off the coast of Cork.
Yeah.
Like if the Russian submarines were in there and cuts the
Uh,
cables and all the
uh,
communication,
uh.
has Ireland, Ireland sitting back. He was saying basically we Brits are spending a fortune on our army and all that, and looking after uh, uh, the Irish.
Aye. Okay. The danger is, of course, I'm put my hand up, Pat, because we're practically out of time.
I
The
know. Yep.
danger is that south of Ireland would be seen as a passenger that wants to be,
Yep.
have the benefits. I say that there is a war fever on, and I think Ireland should do everything to avoid joining in that fever and getting sick. There are warmongers out there. There really are. And I think Ireland
Yeah.
should make sure absolutely and say it. We're not joining that. What do you think?